Okay, so let's say I have this Excel product. Here I have this thing that says Excel thing. Here I have a chart. So what many auditing in like spreadsheet design rules, they say things like you should have a documentation page. In fact, I found this old KPMG slide deck that had said something that on your documentation tab you should have you should write the person who you should write what the workbook does, instructions for use. You should define all the macros, where the input comes in, where the output goes, the methodology you use, all this stuff, intended results within within the spreadsheet. Now I'm looking down at my presentation. It still says Excel thing, doesn't it? It didn't update, did it? Let's try this one more time. Okay, so you see this page, it says documentation. Okay, so I have this lorem ipsum generator here, and I've just put some fake documentation, but I based this off of some ones I've really seen. So a lot of people think that this is a really good idea to put the documentation in your code. Or not in your code, in your spreadsheet. I think this is a terrible idea. Excel is not a word processor. If you use Word for this, you can actually create a table of contents, and you can add pictures, and you can turn it into a PDF where things link, and you can send it around. But people are afraid of making a PDF where it's separate from the spreadsheet. This is not a good way to go. And one reason this is not a good way to go is that people put pictures in this, they put full descriptions. Well, you already have a spreadsheet that does heavy-duty work. All those descriptions, all those text boxes, those images, those are all extra memory you're adding on. I mean, you're going to add 2 to 3 megabytes. Now, that's not big in our world of sending things around, but it's actually very big for an Excel spreadsheet. So you're already having it process, some hard model, and now you have all this extra stuff in there that doesn't need to be there, and people think that it does. They think you need to have documentation in the spreadsheet. Now, note, I'm not saying you shouldn't put small sentences and text boxes and say, click here to do this. I don't have a problem with that. And to wit, I want to just demonstrate this point. If I put my mouse over something here, there's a small amount of instructions in Excel, but the main instructions that you get for Excel exist online. They don't exist as part of the product anymore. So keep that in mind. And then the second part of this is that, and I was looking at there was another audit, I think this was from a Society of Actuaries I was looking at. They said, oh yeah, what you really need to do is title your spreadsheet, have a welcome tab, it has a title, it has a version, and then you have to put the creator. Well, I'm not necessarily against putting the creator on it, but this idea of updating a version, in my practice, very few people actually remember to update the versions on here, and they become meaningless. What you really should do, and I talked about this in an earlier episode, is you should keep your version numbers in your file name. As well, you don't need a title for the file if your display, your presentation tab, already has a title on it. It doesn't help you out. Here, you're not really going to, I don't really see a problem with in the same way that I see a problem with what I've seen in terms of documentation of how bloated it makes a spreadsheet. But again, it's all part of the problem that we think that we're controlling these things through the spreadsheet when there's already inherent mechanisms to do it. So, for example, when I save it, it will keep that I was the last person to use it, and you can save the version numbers in it. And when you do a save as, you're always creating a new version versus just changing it on here. One other thing I've seen people do is, well, I want a timestamp for every time I save it. So they use now or today, which are volatile formulas. Again, you already have a bloated spreadsheet. You're going to make a change. You're going to make a change on here, and now it's going to update and it's going to recalculate everything. So the lesson to take away from this is keep the things in Excel that you need Excel for. But if you can get away without using, I mean, if you can put these in other documents, you are not violating Sarbanes-Oxley by putting this in another document and keeping it with it. And that's really my take on that.
I'm agreeing with you. And also another good argument to not have documentation of that kind inside your workbook is that, A, nobody reads it.
Yeah, who reads it?
They always ask for it, but 9 times out of 10 they're not going to read it unless you have a very detail-oriented client, and that's fine. So you give it to them in a nice PDF with the screenshots. They're never going to read it, but they paid you to make it, fine. But because people don't have the attention spans, it's just the reality of the world we live in today. So I like to make, if I do need instructions, they are real time, and sort of like you pointed out with the when you were hovering over the text align or whatever, Same concept. So you click on a cell. If it needs to have instructions, you know, put it in a cell note or a data validation pop-up thingy. That's the technical term. But that way it's just a tiny amount of information, only the information they need at the time, because they don't want to absorb any more than that anyway. So it's overkill.
It is, and they don't read, especially they don't read it if it's in the Excel file, because it's not easy to read. I mean, it's not conducive like a Word file is, or a PDF. I mean, it wasn't designed to do that.
Right.
All right, Oz, you said it's judge and jury.
Yeah.
How many copies is that?
Oh, man.
It's really more of an argument than a tip.
Right. Well, and okay,
I don't take that into a video either.
Here's what I'm gonna do is, you know, I'm gonna give that a 5 because you gotta at least think about that and have an opinion about it. That's because I have mixed feelings about it. I can see where, you know, you put documentation in and nobody reads it. Then with Excel web app, objects don't transfer over. Right, shapes don't transfer over. You can add pictures, you can add charts, and so I have had to look with even the simplest shape that says do not touch anything on this sheet. If it's in a rectangle shape,
well, Excel web app is a whole new ballpark, you know.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
and also
it is something
if you want to buck conventions or whatever, don't do any PDF or anything. Make a little video.
Yeah, that'll work too.
You know, little tutorial.
Yes.
I mean, people like a 5-minute tutorial. You know, there's plenty of free stuff out there that you can use. I use Camtasia, as you guys know. I'm a little obsessed with Camtasia these days. But you can make very effective, a very effective 5-minute video to explain, you know, what would have taken you a few pages on a PDF that nobody reads. So.
Yes, yes, and I've done that for clients. I will put on I'll make a 2-minute, 5-minute video.
Right.
Put it on. You can list it because if you put it private, then you gotta. It's more complicated.
Well, or you just send it to them as an MP4 or whatever, and they have it on their own internal network, and then they have your, you know, lovely voice and likeness or whatever in their, you know, on their company servers to remember you by.
But
that's also a nice little bonus.
So I give this a 5 for the conversation needing to be had.
Well, okay, so, you know, the point here is the people who are advancing this stuff are not you and I. They're often auditors or actuaries, and I used to be an auditor, and there's an accountant way of thinking, and they want to make a spreadsheet like it, but they don't realize that the practical implications of these things are not useful. I understand it's important that they need to exist because we need to have spreadsheet auditing and archiving of versions. But this thing where people are going to update the version each time, well, maybe the accountant with the accountant personality, which is why I'm not an accountant because I don't have an accountant personality, will update it every time. But most of us are not OCD like that, with all due respect to accountants. So I've insulted taxi drivers and accountants.
Nice.
Our core audience.
The person who's driving you to the person who's paying you.
Right.
Yeah, nicely done. Nicely done.
But it's
just that contrarianism coming through on Excel.
Right. Well, we dropped off both. I guess we lost our market share for both of those tonight. You're welcome, everyone.